Lagos hates poor people, even at the beach. Hello everyone, welcome back. So I've recently drafted a short essay titled No Free Beach, The Loss of a Lagosian Birthright. And it explores the rapid disappearance of free and accessible beaches in Lagos, which is largely due to privatization and also the government fees to access public beaches. Now yes, there are still some free beaches, but they are often further away and harder to reach, and in the context of urban social life, it's rather redundant. So this is going to be largely a sociological analysis, and we're going to look at urban inequalities in Lagos and how inequalities are spatialized. It's very similar, it has an overlap with what I discussed previously in my luxury real estate video, where I examined how class distinctions are mapped into space. There's a tendency when we think about inequality to just think about it in economic or financial terms, but there's so much to discuss in regard to how inequalities do look and show up in regard to space, the space that we occupy. How does it affect our access to leisure? How does it affect our access to transport? How does it affect our access to beaches? So, no free beach. Let's discuss. So Lagos is a coastal city in southwestern Nigeria. It's made up of islands and lagoons, and its geography naturally lends itself to beaches, with long coastlines stretching across the Atlantic. Scholars estimate that as many as 79% of Lagos residents live within 500 meters of the coastline. During the 16th to 18th century, Lagos became involved in the transatlantic slave trade. It served as a major slave port till the 19th century. During the colonial era, Lagos was a huge commercial and administrative hub for the British rulers.
A ferry boat across the water from the island brings you to the great docks at Apapa, where ships from all over the world call to unload their cargoes and to load up with the crops and minerals which are the great wealth of Nigeria. This is the trade which brings prosperity to the country and which gives Nigeria its importance in world markets.
And then post-independence, Lagos was the capital of Nigeria up until 1991, until the capital city was then moved to Abuja. Lagos, however, still remains Nigeria's largest city and commercial centre. So to ground this analysis, our major case study is going to be Bar Beach and its successor, EcoAtlantic. So let's take a trip down memory lane. From the early 1970s to late 1980s, during Nigeria's military regime, Bar Beach was the country's most infamous public execution ground. It's a bit strange that they did choose the beach, but okay. And there, armed robbers and the likes of coup plotters were executed by firing squad. It was very much a public spectacle. There were huge crowds. It was televised. They had journalists. So alongside it being a beach, it doubled up as a well-known execution ground. You know, beaches are supposed to be associated with nature, tranquility, but no. The first of such executions took place in 1971. This was when Babatunde Folorunsho was executed for armed robbery, and there were others such as Dr. Oyenusi, who was executed in the 90s. The coup plotters from General Murtala Muhammad's assassination in 1976 were also executed at the beach. So Bar Beach wasn't just a leisure spot or place for recreational activities. It was also a stage for state-sanctioned violence. So a little detour, let's take a look at some archived newspapers. This newspaper by Drum in November 1971 documents the last words of Ishola Oyenusi. From reading it, it looks like he was 28, which is crazy to think about because that is very, very young. From scanning the newspaper page, it looks like they did a mini interview for him right at the brink of his execution. And he was the most wanted killer at the time. And we also have this page which says the doctor's disciples. I believe they worked alongside Dr. Oyenusi to commit the armed robbery. So if you're interested in reading about this story, I'll definitely link it in the description. And these archives give a really good taste in regard to how Nigerian journalism was and the quality of it, which in my opinion was very, very good. So here we have another Drum article in June 1976, and on the left we can see that it documents the individuals that were killed as a result of General Murtala Muhammad's death, and of course this all took place at Bar Beach. But I actually wanted to bring everyone's attention to the bottom right, which highlights this weird paradox which I basically alluded to. It says joy on Death Beach. It reads, the Bar Beach on Victoria Island, Lagos is a favourite with swimmers and sunbathers who return to the seaside just a few days after the bodies had been dragged away. Yikes. Executions aside, I do find it really interesting that the lady is nude. Does that tell us anything interesting about women? Whether or not they were liberal or conservative? Clearly not. At the beach in the 70s. This could never run in 21st century 2025 Nigeria. In this next paper, we have Drum again in 1978, and it's a lady who seems to be enjoying herself in the sun, and again, she's nude from above. And lastly, we have another paper from April 2009, and it's quite clear from the photos that Bar Beach was a huge community hub. Please do let me know your thoughts in the comments regarding the lack of conservatism around the beach dressing. Is it that women are just a lot more hypersexualized now, or what is it? Today, thank God, no more bloodstained beaches. Well, I hope so. But on the other hand, we don't really have beaches. It's been privatized, or the government has now implemented an access fee. Access to a beach or a beach house may cost anywhere from 2,000 naira up to 3 million or even more. At the lower end of the price scale are the non-privatized government beaches. This would be your Elegushi Beach, which is currently priced at 2k per adult. But to access other facilities within the beach, beachgoers will be presented with additional costs. For those who are the higher earners in Lagos society, on any given beach day, you will find them at a private beach. And these spots, such as Ilashe, will take you well into the millions. And the process of getting there is an experience in and of itself, because it's not somewhere you can get to by land. You have to rent a boat, and the cost of that is, in my opinion, is steep. And then you embark on a 30 or 35-minute journey across Lagos waters. Once you finally arrive, you arrive at a small dock. Then you're picked up by a vehicle that would drive you to the beach house. But the drive to the beach house from the dock is about 1 minute, so I don't actually know why those vehicles are used. The beach houses are nice, I'll give it that. And overall, it is a fun beach day. It's a fun experience to have. And the beach houses are pretty secluded from city life. Despite the fact that it's secluded, you actually do have locals peering over the walls. Well, that's been my experience. Although I'd say it's an innocent act of voyeurism. They're observing a socioeconomic reality which is far beyond their own reality, which is a great example of how two extremes are so closely connected in Lagos life, and also by extension just general Nigerian life. And it's also an example, which we're going to touch on further, how inequalities are spatialized. So the vast majority of Lagos beaches are no longer free and accessible. So what, Aisha? So what? Perhaps on the surface it doesn't really seem like a big deal. After all, many people think of beaches as places for leisure, not a place where one will have inherent right to, or something that's a necessity. But I argue, and I argue very strongly, that the loss is far more than just a loss of a leisure spot, and to dismiss it as a trivial issue is very, very bad. Generally, the growing shortage of public spaces in Nigeria and Lagos specifically signals that access to nature and communal spaces are going to continue to be reclassified as luxuries. The lack of free beaches is telling us that people's lives are being deprioritized. Lagos is being reorganized and redrawn through class and income. If you've been here long enough, you know I don't butter up Nigeria at all. Like, I have no free PR for them. I don't have paid PR either. I am not, and I will never give you, this is the side of Africa that they don't show you. This is the side of Nigeria that they don't show you. I don't give a toss. And if you look at stats and figures, you will know that Nigeria has an overwhelming poverty issue. According to Amnesty International, 2/3 of Lagos residents live below the poverty line on just $1 a day, and 70% of the population reside in informal settlements. Maroko is such a fabulous example of an informal settlement. Generally speaking, for various reasons, cities do attract a large number of poorer people. At the same time, cities also reproduce and intensify poverty and inequality. And that's exactly what we see in Lagos. Even if you're blind, you're going to see that. And for those who aren't living below the poverty line, things aren't necessarily fantastic either. As Forbes Africa reports, the median salary for men is only 70k, with women earning even less at 50k. So it's very clear from those figures that those living below the poverty line are going to have no disposable income to go to beaches anyway. And for the average earner, beaches may be reserved for special occasions. So I asked my followers on Instagram if they think that beaches should be free. And here's what they had to say. Anything that God made should be free. It's like having to pay for the sun. Beaches should indeed be free. Living in Nigeria is already accompanied by a plethora of additional costs for basic necessities of life. You drill borehole yourself to get water, you supply your own electricity with generators, inverters, you pay people to secure your premises. The point is, you are indirectly taxed for bare necessities, so at the very least, people should be able to freely enjoy the scenic locations that the country has to offer. In my opinion, beaches not being free is a microcosm of one of the main issues plaguing our country: money being a barrier for people to access a modicum of fulfillment in life. Poor or rich, I think that people should be able to experience standing by the seaside while appreciating being alive. Well, yes, the land belongs to the people. Another example of capitalism erosion on the quality of our lives. I think it should be hybrid in my opinion, in the sense that popular beaches require staff to maintain the beaches, for example, cleaners, because unfortunately some people treat beaches like a bin. Where I'm from originally, Ghana, I have personally seen people buy from vendors at the beach and then throw rubbish into the sea. Forget personal items behind, intentionally or unintentionally, and even heard stories of people defecated in the beach and sea. Additionally, it will require staff like lifeguards who also need to get paid. If it's completely free, I feel the burden will ultimately fall on taxpayers. So a resolution to this will be perhaps to have free entry, but paid parking, for example, and other amenities. Yes, they should be. It's sad that a resident of a city with a coastline can't access it without paying. Thank you to all that submitted your opinions. It's nice to know that I'm not speaking to a blank wall. A common rebuttal against the criticisms for beach fees is often that charging fees for entry will help with cleanliness and that it also keep miscreants away. But I believe that this argument does fall short. Public beaches, despite the fees, still have issues with maintenance. And there's also very little transparency from the government in regards to how the beach fees are being used. What is the Lagos state government doing with the revenue, and how is that reinvested back into the infrastructure and life of the beach? Nobody knows. If you know, let me know. Beaches are not a luxury, they are part of island life. I would like to die on that hill. And to monetize beaches and to privatize them is to reinforce a form of inequality. A type of inequality that is largely spatialized. Cleaner and safer beaches should be reinforced not through monetization, but through collective responsibility. This is a task for the government and also the community. And it's obviously a bit difficult because of the lack of maintenance culture to begin with, and we know Nigeria really struggles with that on a whole. When I'm in Nigeria, I always have a big culture shock when it comes to things like littering. Too many times I've seen people have something like, let's say, pure water sachet, and it just goes onto the floor. And that's absolutely crazy to me. If we compare this to the UK, there have been loads of government programming regarding littering and not to do it, so people don't do it. At least they don't really do it visibly, because it's quite socially embarrassing to litter. And if one was to litter, someone may just be like, oi, pick that up, mate. And you don't want to be that person, so you're going to find a bin and you're going to get rid of your rubbish. Anyway, public sanitation is a public good. The cost of maintaining public beaches should be funded through revenue, such as tax. What exactly is the Lagos state government doing with its revenue? As captured by Anu Adeoye in a Financial Times article, he asks, if a city that collected more than $800 million in tax revenues last year, 45% up from the previous year, cannot guarantee free access to the beach when its much poorer counterparts across West Africa do so with relative ease, then who exactly is Lagos for? And you know what? I think that's a fabulous question, because who exactly is Lagos for? And yes, Lagos's counterparts do have free beaches such as Dakar, Banjul, Accra, and many others. So clearly Lagos wants to be unique, but in a bad way. While Lagos is a trendsetter in Africa, it's not a trendsetter worldwide. Across the Atlantic, we see a similar pattern in Jamaica. It's reported today that 99% of Jamaica's beaches are off limits to the general public. They have largely now been sold off and privatized to corporations and private landowners. The restriction of the Jamaican coast can be traced back to the Beach Control Act of 1956, which was a colonial law. It granted beachfront property owners full rights to the beach. Although it was introduced during the colonial era, the act still remains in force today. Therefore, it's still shaping post-colonial Jamaican life and spatial inequality. Back then, access to the beach was intertwined with race and power. Of course, because the colonial elites owned a large majority of the coastal land. I would say now in the post-colonial era, it's shifted a bit. Beach access is negotiated less by race race directly and more in regard to capital, but as a result, these inequalities are still highly racialized. A lot of the luxury resorts and private development are owned by foreign investors, catering to an international and also quite wide clientele. So here we see Jamaicans being priced out of their home and their local environment. Maybe that's the slice of the pie that the Lagos state government also wants. I quoted Baudrillard in my luxury real estate video, but it captures everything perfectly. So here we go again. The ascendancy of the urban and industrial milieu is producing new examples of shortages of space and time, fresh air, greenery, water, silence. Certain goods which were once free and abundantly available are becoming luxuries accessible only to the privileged. And I believe that captures Lagos's trajectory perfectly. Funnily enough, it's not that Lagos lacks beaches, although coastal erosion has claimed over 80% of the coastline. But still yet, there are enough beaches. The issue is actually the fact that it's been deliberately curtailed. The Lagos state government destroyed Bar Beach. They sandfilled it to construct EcoAtlantic. EcoAtlantic is a $6 billion artificial city built for the wealthy. The irony of it all is that it's built on a space which used to be communal and free. Political ecologist Idowu Ajibade describes EcoAtlantic as the combined problem of climate change, disaster risk, and capitalist urbanization, with another academic also writing that Bar Beach was considered a beloved and rare outdoor public space, one where Nigerians of all social strata visit with their family. It was also a space of possibility for dangerous but potential, liberating political or personal transformation. So I do want to take some time and assess EcoAtlantic and be very critical of it, because we can't afford to take these things at face value. And I also don't think it's fair considering the amount of people that have actually suffered as a result of its establishment.
The road that was lost to the sea is back and is now motorable. The buildings that were deserted are now occupied. A new city will emerge from what was once a devastated area as a result of nature's onslaught. But that devastation is now history.
They have reclaimed 5 million square meters of land from the sea. They have built the beginnings of this amazing wall. This is an ingenious engineering feat.
So one of the official purposes of the development was to help Lagos from coastal erosion and support economic growth.
Today, a liability that threatens the entire Victoria land of Lagos has been arrested and is being converted to a great asset of prosperity.
But the reality is it may continue to exacerbate inequality. The existence of EcoAtlantic has problems environmentally and socially. Lucas, writing for The Guardian, states, EcoAtlantic is where you begin to see a possible future, a vision of privatized green enclaves for the ultra-rich, ringed by slums lacking water and electricity. The problem with EcoAtlantic sits within a very long history of exclusionary urban planning stemming from the colonial era. Mendelssohn puts this really well when he says, when contextualized within a local genealogy of uneven development, EcoAtlantic demonstrates how sedimentary ecologies are often entangled with exclusionary, anti-poor, aesthetically motivated modes of urban planning. So in simple terms, what he's saying is that EcoAtlantic demonstrates how megadevelopment reproduce inequalities under the guise of development. It's often presented as something that's so beneficial, but what it tends to do is that it entrenches social and environmental hierarchies. Martin Murray, an academic, describes this phenomenon as city doubles. These are exclusive master plan developments that sit on the outskirts of dense urban areas, and they serve two very interesting and questionable purposes. Firstly, they're supposed to help escape the issues of the city, such as overcrowding, informal settlements, poverty, crime. Secondly, they remain very, very conveniently linked to the city. So these city doubles, such as EcoAtlantic, are intentionally created to escape the problems with Lagos life. But very, very importantly, they are not created to be completely independent of the city. It's supposed to be exclusive and secluded, but also connected. So it gives residents a sanitized environment, a more quiet environment, and overall a better environment and living conditions. So they benefit from the main city, but they go home to their enclave for some respite. So in August 2008, it was documented on a very lovely morning to clear the site of what would become EcoAtlantic. 80,000 residents along the Bar Beach area and Victoria Island were forcibly evicted. In other words, one Lewandano Tipa, and it was carried out by Lagos State's demolition squad. According to a legal complaint filed by Nigeria's National Human Rights Commission, the operation involved a heavily armed police escort, plainclothes thugs, brandishing guns and cudgels. So basically, government officials, with the support of thugs and officers, evicted people quite aggressively and violently. It was alleged that they set fire to their homes, their businesses, churches, mosques, and other community facilities. One thing for sure is that the Nigerian government, they love thugs. Despite the brutality of these actions, then Governor Babatunde Fashola defended the evictions shock horror, arguing that it was necessary to take people out of living on refuse heaps, adding, "We will bulldoze away your difficult conditions. LOL."
Made up of hand-picked policemen and state paramilitaries, the task force operate on a mandate all of their own. They have the power to arrest, seize goods, and even destroy property without providing any compensation.
During my research, I did come across some really interesting academic sources which does discuss the evictions in Lagos, especially around prime real estate areas such as waterfront areas. As you can imagine, very, very little notice is given to residents. Of course, it's aggressive and there is usually never any kind of compensation or rehousing. In other words, the Lagos state government tells people to fuck off, which in my opinion, I believe is a form of necropolitics, which for those who don't know is a social political theory whereby the state basically decides who lives and who dies. The topic of EcoAtlantic can go on forever, but I would say that it has been widely criticised by some scholars due to the environmental effects that it will have. It's argued that the coastal engineering that has been used to construct EcoAtlantic will have a negative ripple effect on other parts of Lagos. The project was ironically presented as a solution to the issues that were going on in Bar Beach regarding flooding and erosion. But by creating EcoAtlantic in the way that they've done, it's just going to push a lot of these issues to other parts of Lagos. As Mendelssohn notes, the Great Wall of Lagos may protect the land directly behind it, EcoAtlantic, but unfortunately it does so by displacing erosion onto communities further along the Lekki Peninsula. So as you may or may not know, there is a wall that protects EcoAtlantic from the sea, but academics are basically saying, LOL, you're just going to make the lives of other people worse because you're just going to push those environmental conditions onto other communities. So as a result, everyone else is more vulnerable. So for us within sociology, we view inequality as a relational problem, not just numbers and income gaps. We assess how people operate, how they move within space, or how they're excluded from space. And it's clear that in very, very unequal societies, the wealthy enclose themselves physically and socially from everyone else. Mike Davis calls this architectural policing, and that's the way urban designs are enforced to create separation. For example, gated communities, estates, high compound walls, things like that. The rise of private beach houses, in my opinion, is a good example of class clustering, and it produces what Ashamin describes as a categorized society, and that's one where the lives of the privileged are sealed off from the ordinary or precarious. Tonkis reminds us, inequalities are produced and expressed through social and spatial modes of distinction, separation and exclusion, from the broad lines of urban segregation to the smaller logics of spatial ranking, which see some go to the head of the queue while others go to the back of the bus. So I say all of this to say inequality isn't just in economic terms, and we shouldn't view it as such. It's written into the geography of our cities. So Final thoughts. My mother grew up in Lagos and she was never faced by the beach. Understandably, she took it for granted. She's a true islander. But things are no longer the way that they once were in the 60s, 70s and 80s. Today, in a hot tropical city, there is very little respite, and these natural spaces are becoming exclusionary and monetized. Lagosians are losing their birthright, and not because of coastal erosion, but to capitalism and greed, and to a country that seems to want to take everything and give nothing back. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're hearing annoying noises in the back, it's very much fireworks season now. So when it gets dark, it sounds like a war zone. Please do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think beaches should be free? I won't judge you. What are your thoughts on EcoAtlantic? Is Nigeria stripping everything away from citizens? Do you think Lagos is becoming increasingly segregated? And what do spatialized inequalities look like in the city? I have one more video essay this year. After that, school is out. Please subscribe, please like, and of course, please share. Anyway, until next time, guys.